The glider does not even have to collapse for pilots to induce the most common handling mistake in flying. Today, I'm going to analyze this video from YouTube to give you everything that you need to avoid this situation in the future. Ready? Here we go. I'm an elite paraglider with over 3,000 flight hours and multiple distance records. Founder of the Paragliding Men's Group, where great pilots transform into greater men, partners, and fathers. Mastery in the sky begins with owning our shit on the ground, so if you're a man who wants it all, welcome home. Hey everybody, what's up? This is Ari in the Air. Welcome back to the channel. Stoked you're here. Today, I've got a video from a fellow Oregonian pilot, Borce, and very informative, and I can kind of taste the emotional texture of it just by watching it. So let's dive right in here. Okay, I'm going to watch it through and just kind of commentate the first time, and then we'll go back and break it down. Okay, he's flying on a blue day, Alpina 4, big lift, glider shoots, deep stall, asymmetric stall, tail slide, shoots again, still tail sliding, shoots hard, restall, still stalled, shoots again, restall, still stalled, deep tail slide, shoots, lets it fly. Okay. Back into strong lift. Okay, so let's go all the way back to the beginning. So first, just the sky, and you can see here in the very beginning, there's a paraglider that's specced out. Blue skies like this, not uncommon to have real strong, sharp edges to thermals. And as you listen, he flies in and it goes into strong lift immediately. My guess here is that this is a relatively novel situation. And I think that the things that we want to talk about today are fear and dealing with things that you haven't experienced before. So let's play. Okay, the important bit actually happens like in a really short period of time. So the technical error here that's being made is that as he flies into a strong climb, the glider shoots. You see he breaks the chute accurately and well. What he doesn't do is let up on the brakes when the glider stops progressing forward. I've talked about this in a lot of videos. If the glider shoots, you want to pull as much brake for as long as you need to get the glider to stop progressing towards the horizon. The moment that it stops progressing towards the horizon, you have to let up on the brakes. And that's the technical error that he makes here. As the glider stops progressing forward, he stays on those brakes. And as he swings back under the glider, it's enough brake to deep stall the glider. From deep stall, he goes into tail slide as shoots, and then he starts into this cascade where his hands are low and he's afraid and a bit inexperienced. To give him credit, he does totally nail it by staying in a symmetrical stall, and he manages the stall and stays in the stall and stays in the stall and stays in the stall without line twisting, without taking a huge shoot that becomes a collapse or a cravat, and he ends up letting it out in a clean configuration. So, there are kudos for that, but obviously unintentional stalls are a huge problem in paragliding, and we've seen a lot of them on this channel. In general, this falls into the biggest category of handling mistakes, which is overhandling. The glider is being overhandled here. Honestly, if he would have just been a bag of potatoes under the glider, none of this would have happened. The glider would have shot, and even if it took a small collapse on that chute, no problem. He would have swung right under it. So some of the things relevant here, just psychologically, pilots tend to have a fear of the glider shooting, but a shooting glider is a flying glider, so I don't mind it nearly as much as a really, really slow glider. I'd rather have a shooting glider than a stalled glider. Most of us would. The other thing is that fear tenses our bodies. Like literally, we just tend to tense a bit more. So Borce, the pilot in question here, is physically incredibly strong. And so especially, having strong triceps, you can stall the glider pretty easily. So being scared and having novel things like flying into a really sharp edged thermal like he does in this video can predispose you to overhandling the glider. So it's really important to have emotional intelligence and nervous system regulation in paragliding. And that basically looks like keeping your breath deep and consistent, breathing in and out of your nose, and noticing when you get startled, scared, anything like that. So as the cascade progresses, he has a number of what we call exit windows, where basically the glider shoots forward right here, you could go hands up in that moment. Right here, you could go hands up in that moment. Again, here, hands up in that moment. And again, here, he ends up going hands up and the glider flies. Anytime the glider's in front of you in a stalled configuration is a good time to go hands up, let the glider fly, and then you can deal with the small cravats that may have ensued. Luckily, he flies away from this incident without a problem, and other than needing to change his underwear. But the glider is actually stalled for a really long time in this. It's kind of impressive. So as you progress in paragliding, things are going to happen. You're going to get sensations. You're going to hear sounds out of your vario. You're going to see things in your glider that you've never seen before. In general, having the foundational glider handling skills down pat, like when the glider goes behind you, you go hands up. When the glider shoots, you pull as much brake as you need to stop it, but you release when the glider stops progressing forward towards the horizon. That's really important. Also, having the training, going to SIV, and like one SIV is not nearly enough, and 10 SIVs is not enough. At this point, I'm entering my 12th season paragliding. I think I've got probably 2,000 stalls. And so I feel very confident in having muscle memory and knowing exit windows on high aspect ratio race gliders and all of these things. So there's really no trade for experience and repetition and repetition and repetition, installed configurations and dealing with collapses and all of this. So this is why we train as paraglide pilots. This is why we go to SIV every spring. This is why we go to Iquique, why we go to Organya, why we go to Turkey, so we can get those repetitions. So to summarize here, the vario makes sounds that he wasn't used to. The glider shoots forward real hard. He catches it well, but he does not let up on the brakes soon enough. When the glider stops progressing forward, you must let up on the brakes once again and let it fly. He enters a deep stall, and then he goes on a 15-second cascading rodeo ride trying to handle this crazy glider as it does things that are surely confusing, and I can only imagine the experience here. Ultimately, he times a release well. The glider flies away without a cravat of any kind. So the moral of the story here is don't overhandle the glider. Got to release when the glider stops progressing forward. And in general, being fearful and inexperienced is something that we want to hedge with practice and training and mentorship and all of the things that in general are just wonderful to go through. Progression is why we're in the sport. Mentorship is a wonderful connection with people with more experience than us who care about our progression. So all of these things are not just means to an end, but are worthwhile things to fill your life with in the first place. So hopefully this helps. Thanks so much to Borce for sending the video over. We'll see you on the next episode.